Welcome to the Strait Bible Podcast, where we study the Bible to know God more and to live how He desires. And this is our weekend walkthrough series where we're going through the book of Proverbs right now. So click the link in the description below or open up your Bible to Proverbs chapter 2 to follow along with today's Devo. We've been talking about wisdom and seeking wisdom from God. So let's read chapter 2, verse 6 through 15. For the Lord gives wisdom, from His mouth come knowledge and understanding. He stores up sound wisdom for the upright. He is a shield to those who walk in integrity, guarding the paths of justice and watching over the way of His saints. Then you will understand righteousness and justice, and equity, every good path. For wisdom will come into your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. Discretion will watch over you, understanding will guard you, delivering you from the way of evil, from men of perverted speech, who forsake the paths of uprightness, who walk in the ways of darkness, who rejoice in doing evil and delight in the perverseness of evil, men whose paths are crooked and who are devious in their ways. Wow, in verse 6, we see here that God's wisdom, its origin is from God Himself, and anyone who has any wisdom received it from Him. Now, the term "from His mouth" reinforces that it is God's words that contain the wisdom necessary for us to know and to follow Him. It's just like we read in Romans chapter 10, verse 17, which says, "So faith comes from hearing, and hearing through the word of Christ." In verse 7 through 8, we get some key words. The word "stores up" pops out at us. What it means is that God, in His providence, knows the appropriate time to bestow and award wisdom to people who He gives it to. So He stores it for the upright, which really is those who are made upright by Him. And in this, we see that the wisdom of man is one thing, but the wisdom that God gives to man is something that's more supernatural. It goes beyond simple knowledge and just knowing how to do math equations or something like that, or just knowing simple things of the world. But the wisdom of God goes beyond, and God gives it out. He gives it out to world leaders. He gives it out to people in industry. He gives it out to common people. People who are, living, normal lives. But God, stores it to a certain point, and then He awards it out. He bestows it at the right time for the people that need it in the right way. Thus, wisdom is always to be sought out diligently and cultivated in practice. Although those things are true, wisdom is not something merited by the acts of an individual, but it's a grace that's given by God, and it's given by God's choosing and God's mercy. The next words that pop out are shield, guarding, and watching over. So wisdom is stored up by God, but when it's given as a shield. It's given to guard. It's given to watch over the person who it's being given to. So the purpose of the gift of wisdom is to protect the paths of the saints of God. But that leads us to an important question. Protection from what? What is it that wisdom is protecting us from? Which is the second part of this passage, and it answers that question. But before we answer that question, I want to remind you to subscribe to this channel so that your YouTube feed is consistently getting some good devotional and Bible study material. And if you get any benefit from this video, please give it a like. Now, verse 11 through 15 answers that question. What is it that wisdom protects us from? From the way of evil, men of perverted speech, those who forsake the paths of righteousness, those whose paths are crooked, those who are devious in their ways. Those are all the mentions in verse 11 through 15 of what the saint is being protected from when he's receiving wisdom. You see, those things, all those things, men of perverted speech, those who forsake the paths of righteousness, the crooked paths and devious in ways, those are all things that can bring down a man into darkness, into destruction. It can destroy his character, it can destroy his reputation, and at the end of the day, it can destroy his life, just by the choices he makes and the crooked paths that lead to destruction. But wisdom graciously, out of God's grace and his wanting to protect those people that are his, God graciously gives wisdom to protect the one who's blessed to receive it from those ends, from that destruction. And as we continue on in Proverbs, we'll learn many of the more exact ways that wisdom does this, how it protects from simple thinking, from a lack of prudence, through making a bad decision, through going down the ways of these people who are perverse and crooked and who only seek out their own good during the harm, and the way they achieve it is by harming others. Those can all lead to destructive ends, but we're going to see as we go through Proverbs the specific ways that having wisdom and prudence in your decision making and in character can prevent a man from those destructive ends. So we'll read that as we go through the book of Proverbs in this weekend walkthrough series. But until then, thanks for tuning into the Strait Bible Podcast. Thanks for joining me for this weekend walkthrough. Enjoy your weekend. Stay blessed. Grace and peace.